The old alien looked at Commander Jake Morrison with tired eyes. Her name was Vextara, and she had seen this same scene play out hundreds of times before. New species would come to the testing world full of hope and confidence. They would listen to her warnings with polite attention. Then they would enter the chamber and never come out alive. "You should leave now," she said in her clicking voice. "Go back to your small planet and live your lives in peace. The test has killed everyone who tried it for 10,000 years. Jake Morrison stood straight in his blue uniform. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm brown eyes. Behind him stood his team of 5 other humans. They had traveled for months to reach this distant world, and they were not going to turn back now. "We appreciate your concern," Jake said carefully. "But humanity has decided to take this test. We need to join the Galactic Council." The alien's 6 eyes blinked one by one. She made a sound like bitter laughter. "Need? You think you need this?" "Every species thinks they need it. The proud Korvaxians thought they needed it. The brilliant mathematicians thought they needed it. The peaceful empaths thought they needed it. All of them are dead now." Dr. Lisa Chun stepped forward from the group. She was a small woman with kind eyes and graying hair. As the team psychologist, she had studied the records of every species that had attempted the test. The failure rate was absolute. Not one species had ever succeeded. "Can you tell us anything about what the test involves?" Lisa asked Vextara S. Mandibles clicked again. "It tests what cannot be tested. It measures what cannot be measured. The ancient architects built it to find the one species worthy of their legacy. But I believe they built it too well. I believe it is impossible to pass." Captain Ben Parker, Jake's tactical officer, whispered to his commander, "Sir, maybe we should think about this more. If every other species failed, we did not come this far to give up before we try," Jake replied quietly. "Humans have always faced impossible odds. We survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and 1,000 other disasters. We will face this too." The testing chamber stood before them like a dark mountain. It was a perfect black sphere, 50 meters wide, made of some unknown material that seemed to eat light instead of reflecting it. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with blue fire that hurt to look at directly. Around the chamber, the representatives of 40 different alien species had gathered to watch. They came from across the galaxy, drawn by curiosity and the entertainment of watching another species fail. Some looked like giant insects with sharp claws. Others were floating balls of gas that spoke through translators. A few looked almost human, but with strange skin colors and too many limbs. "The test begins tomorrow at sunrise," Vextara announced. "Choose one person to enter. They go alone with no weapons, no tools, no help. They either come out victorious or they do not come out at all." That night, the human team sat in their temporary shelter, a small metal building provided by the Galactic Council. The air was thin and cold, and the alien stars looked down on them like unfriendly eyes. "I should be the one to go," Jake said. "I am the mission commander. The responsibility is mine." "No," said Dr. Lisa Chun. "I volunteer." The room went quiet. Amy Rodriguez, their xenobiologist, was the first to speak. "Lisa, you are brilliant, but you are not trained for combat. If this is some kind of fighting test, then I will die," Lisa said simply. "But what if it is not about fighting?" "What? If it is about something else entirely?" Jake studied her face. Lisa was barely 5 feet tall and looked more like a grandmother than a space explorer. She had spent her career studying the human mind, trying to understand what made people tick. She was gentle and soft-spoken, the kind of person who would stop to help a lost child or comfort a crying friend. "Why you?" Jake asked. Lisa smiled sadly. "Because I have spent my life studying what makes humans special. Not our technology or our weapons or our intelligence. Those things are useful, but they are not what makes us human." "What does make us human?" Amy asked. "Our ability to care about others even when it costs us something," Lisa replied. "Our willingness to try again after we fail. Our refusal to give up hope even when hope seems foolish." Ben Parker shook his head. Those are nice thoughts, but they will not help you survive whatever is in that chamber. Maybe not, Lisa agreed, but maybe survival is not the point. Maybe the test is about something else. She stood and walked to the small window, looking out at the alien landscape. The ground was covered with strange purple grass that glowed faintly in the dark. 2 moons hung in the sky, casting weird shadows across the testing site. Every species that took this test was proud of something, Lisa continued. The Korvaxians were proud of their strength. The mathematicians were proud of their intelligence. The empaths were proud of their kindness. But what if pride is the trap? What if the test is not about proving how good you are, but about something else entirely? Jake joined her at the window. What do you think it really tests? I do not know, Lisa admitted, but I have a feeling it tests the one thing that every other species was afraid to show, which is weakness, imperfection, the willingness to admit that you are not perfect and do not have all the answers. The next morning came too quickly. The alien sun rose slowly over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. The testing chamber began to glow brighter, as if it could sense that the time had come. Lisa stood before the entrance in a simple gray jumpsuit. She carried nothing in her hands and had no tools or weapons. The rules were absolute. The person taking the test must enter alone and unarmed. The gathered aliens watched with expressions that ranged from curious to pitying. Most of them had seen this scene many times before. They knew how it would end. Dr. Chun, Jake said quietly, remember that you are not just representing yourself in there. You are representing every human who ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. Lisa nodded. I understand. But I am also representing every human who ever helped a stranger, who ever forgave an enemy, who ever chose love over fear. The chamber's entrance opened like a giant eye, revealing complete darkness within. Lisa took a deep breath of the thin alien air and stepped forward. Wait, called Vexthara. Before you enter, you should know something. The chamber does not just kill those who fail, it traps them. Their consciousness, their memories, their last thoughts all become part of the test itself. If you fail, you will spend eternity as a warning to others. Lisa paused at the threshold. For a moment, Jake thought she might change her mind and step back. But then she smiled, the same gentle smile she gave to her patients back on Earth. Then I guess I'd better not fail, she said. She stepped into the darkness and the entrance sealed, shut behind her with a sound like the universe tearing in half. The chamber became smooth and featureless once again, giving no hint of what was happening inside. Jake Morrison stood staring at the black sphere, his hands clenched into fists. Somewhere inside that alien construct, a small woman with kind eyes was facing a test that had killed representatives from 847 different species. All he could do now was wait and hope that humanity's greatest strength would be enough to overcome the impossible. The darkness inside the chamber was complete. Lisa-chan could not see her own hands when she held them in front of her face. The silence was so deep that she could hear her own heartbeat echoing in her ears. She stood very still, waiting for something to happen. Then, slowly, a soft blue light began to fill the space around her. Lisa blinked as her eyes adjusted. She was no longer in the black sphere. Instead, she stood in what looked like the biggest library she had ever seen. Shelves stretched up and down and in every direction, farther than she could see. But instead of books, the shelves held thousands of glowing crystals. "Welcome, human," said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was neither male nor female, young nor old, but it felt ancient and tired. "I am what the architects left behind. You may call me the curator." Lisa turned in a slow circle, trying to see who was speaking. "Where are you? I cannot see you." "I am everywhere." "And nowhere," the curator replied. "I am the memory of a species that forgot how to live. But that is not important now. What is important is that you understand where you are." "This is some kind of library," Lisa said, walking closer to one of the shelves. The crystals were beautiful, each one about the size of her fist and filled with swirling colors. "This is the repository of failures," the curator explained. Each crystal contains the final moments of a species that attempted this trial. Their fears, their hopes, their last thoughts as they realized they were not worthy. Lisa reached toward one of the crystals, then stopped. May I touch it? You may. But be warned. You will see what they saw, feel what they felt. Lisa carefully picked up the nearest crystal. The moment her fingers touched its surface, images flooded her mind. She saw proud warriors with scales and sharp teeth fighting against enemies that seemed to be made of shadow. They roared and slashed with their weapons, but the shadows just kept coming. Finally, exhausted and defeated, they fell to their knees and were consumed by the darkness. The Korvaxians, the curator said softly. They believed that strength was the answer to everything. They fought with great courage and died with honor. But they never understood that some battles cannot be won with weapons. Lisa set the crystal back on its shelf with shaking hands. The images had felt so real, so immediate. She moved to another crystal and touched it carefully. This time she saw beings that looked like they were made of living mathematics, their bodies covered in glowing equations. They were frantically trying to solve some impossible problem, their symbols changing faster and faster until they began to smoke and burn out. The mathematicians, the curator continued. They thought logic and calculation could solve any problem. They tried to find the numerical solution to the test. But some questions do not have answers that can be written in equations. Lisa examined crystal after crystal. In each one, she saw the same pattern. Different species, different approaches, but the same result. They all tried to use their greatest strength to overcome the test, and they all failed. What exactly is the test? Lisa asked. There is no test, the curator replied. That is the test. Lisa stopped walking and stood very still. I do not understand. For 10,000 years, species have entered this chamber expecting to be tested. They brought their strength, their intelligence, their technology, their wisdom. They tried to prove they were worthy through action. But the architects were not interested in what you could do. They were interested in what you would choose not to do. The library began to change around Lisa. The shelves faded away, and she found herself standing in a place that made her heart ache with longing. She was in a perfect copy of the wheat field behind her childhood home in Kansas. The golden grain swayed in a gentle breeze, and she could smell the rich earth and growing plants. This is your test, Dr. Lisa Chun of the human species, the curator said. You now have the power to reshape reality in any way you choose. You can become a goddess, create worlds, destroy your enemies, grant yourself eternal life. You can have anything you want. The only question is, what will you choose? Lisa walked through the wheat, feeling the soft stalks brush against her legs. The sun was warm on her face, and birds sang in the distance. It was so beautiful, so perfect. She could feel the power the curator had described, humming just beneath the surface of her thoughts. All she had to do was reach out and take it. I could bring my family here, she said aloud. My daughter, Karen, my parents, all my friends. I could create a world where no one ever gets sick or dies or suffers. You could, the curator agreed. The empaths of Rigel 7 made that choice. They created a paradise for their people. Everyone was happy all the time, but happiness without sadness has no meaning. Joy without sorrow is empty. They still exist, but they are no longer truly alive. Lisa sat down in the wheat and closed her eyes. She thought about her daughter, who was studying to become a doctor. Karen was brilliant and kind, but she was also stubborn and made mistakes. Those mistakes had taught her important lessons. Would Lisa really want to take that away from her? I could make myself smarter, Lisa said. I could solve all the problems that plague humanity. End war, cure disease, eliminate poverty. The evolutionists chose that path, the curator replied. They enhanced themselves until they were perfect beings. But in becoming perfect, they lost their humanity. They still exist, but they are no longer the species they once were. Lisa opened her eyes and looked up at the blue sky. I could have justice. I could punish every person who ever hurt someone innocent. I could make it impossible for anyone to do evil. The Justicars made that choice. They eliminated free will itself to prevent suffering. Their universe became like a machine, everything predetermined and controlled. Beautiful, but meaningless. Lisa stood up and brushed the wheat chaff from her clothes. Then what is the right choice? What did the architects want to find? They wanted to find a species that would look at infinite power and choose to remain finite. A species that would see unlimited possibilities and choose to remain limited. A species that would have the chance to become gods and choose to remain mortal. Lisa walked to the edge of the wheat field where a small farmhouse stood. It was an exact copy of her grandmother's house, down to the blue paint peeling on the shutters and the crook of step on the front porch. She had spent many summers there as a child, learning about life and love and loss. But why? Lisa asked. Why would they want that? Because, the curator said, and for the first time its voice sounded sad, we made the opposite choice. We, the architects, achieved perfection. We eliminated death, suffering, uncertainty. We became beings of pure energy and thought. And in doing so, we lost everything that made existence meaningful. The farmhouse began to fade, and Lisa found herself back in the crystal library. But now she could see the curator. It appeared as a shimmering figure made of light, beautiful but somehow empty. We realized too late that meaning comes from limitation, the curator continued. That love is precious because it can be lost. That life is valuable because it can end. That choice matters because you can choose wrongly. So you created this test to find someone who would make the choice you could not, Lisa said. Exactly. We wanted to find a species that would inherit our knowledge and our power, but would use it to remain themselves. A species that would help others grow and learn and make mistakes instead of trying to eliminate all problems. Lisa looked around at the thousands of crystals, each one containing a species that had failed to understand this simple truth. And if I choose to use the power you are offering, then you will become another crystal in this collection, and humanity will have failed, just like all the others. And if I choose to remain human, then you will be the first to pass the test, and humanity will inherit not just membership in the Galactic Council, but the responsibility to help other species understand what you have learned. Lisa closed her eyes and thought about everything she had seen and heard. She thought about her life on Earth, about her patients who struggled with their problems, about her daughter who was learning to be a doctor, about all the humans who looked up at the stars and dreamed of something better. When she opened her eyes, she was smiling. I choose to remain human, she said quietly. I choose to remain flawed and mortal and imperfect. I choose to keep making mistakes and learning from them. I choose to remain myself. The curator's form brightened, and for the first time in 10,000 years it seemed to feel something like hope. The moment Lisa spoke those words, the crystal library around her began to change. The shelves filled with the failures of dead species slowly faded away. The soft blue light grew warmer and brighter. Lisa felt a strange sensation, as if the very air around her was becoming lighter and more alive. The curator's glowing form stepped closer to her. For the first time since she had entered the chamber, Lisa could see something like a face in the shifting light. It was neither human nor alien, but somehow familiar and comforting. You have chosen correctly, the curator said, and its voice now carried warmth instead of the cold emptiness from before. But choosing is only the first step. Now you must prove that you truly understand why that choice matters. The space around them transformed again. Lisa found herself standing in a simple room with white walls, 2 comfortable chairs, and a small table between them. Through a large window, she could see not the alien world outside the chamber, but the entire galaxy itself. Billions of stars sparkled in the darkness like diamonds scattered across black velvet. Sit with me, the curator said, taking the form of an elderly person with kind eyes and silver hair. Let us talk about what it means to be human. Lisa sat in one of the chairs. It was surprisingly comfortable, reminding her of the old rocking chair in her grandmother's living room. You said the architects made the wrong choice. Can you tell me what happened to them? The curator settled into the other chair with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. We were much like the other species you saw in the crystals. We were proud of our achievements. We had conquered death, eliminated disease, ended war, solved every problem that had ever troubled us. That sounds wonderful, Lisa said. It was at first. For thousands of years we lived in perfect peace and happiness. No one suffered, no one died, no one wanted for anything. But slowly we began to realize that something was missing. The curator gestured toward the window, and the view changed to show scenes of the architect's civilization. Lisa saw beautiful beings of light moving through crystal cities that floated among the stars. Everything was perfect, orderly, and peaceful. What was missing? Lisa asked. Purpose, the curator replied. When there are no problems to solve, no challenges to face, no losses to grieve, existence becomes meaningless. We had eliminated everything that gave life value. We were immortal, but we had forgotten how to live. Lisa watched the scenes in the window. The architects looked peaceful, but there was something empty about them. They moved through their perfect world like sleepwalkers, going through the motions of life without really experiencing it. So you created this test, Lisa said. With our last act of true creativity, yes. We realized that the galaxy needed caretakers, not gods. It needed beings who would make mistakes and learn from them. It needed species who would help others grow and change, not eliminate all their problems for them. The view in the window changed again. Showing Lisa scenes from Earth, she saw humans struggling with natural disasters, fighting diseases, making mistakes, and trying again. She saw acts of kindness and cruelty, moments of joy and sorrow, all the messy complexity of human life. But why us? Lisa asked, What makes humans special? The curator smiled. Tell me, Dr. Chun, what do you think is humanity's greatest strength? Lisa thought for a moment. We are good at surviving. We adapt to new situations. We do not give up easily. Many species are good at surviving and adapting. We are creative. We solve problems in new ways. Many species are creative problem solvers, Lisa frowned, thinking harder. We care about each other. We help strangers even when it costs us something. Many species are capable of great compassion. We explore. We always want to know what is beyond the next hill or the next star. Many species are curious explorers. Lisa was getting frustrated. Everything she could think of, other species could do as well. What made humans different? What had allowed her to pass a test that had killed representatives from 847 other species? Then, slowly, she began to understand. We make mistakes, she said quietly. We fail at things, sometimes spectacularly. And then we get up and try again, even when everyone tells us it is hopeless. The curator nodded encouragingly. Continue. We are not the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced species in the galaxy. We are probably not even the kindest or the most creative, but we are stubborn. We keep going even when it does not make sense to keep going. And why is that important? Lisa looked out at the galaxy again, thinking about all the species that had tried this test before her. Because someone has to be willing to fail. Someone has to be willing to make the wrong choice and learn from it. Someone has to be willing to remain imperfect in a universe that keeps trying to achieve perfection. Yes, the curator said softly. And what makes that special? Lisa was quiet for a long time, watching the stars. Then she smiled. Because perfection is the end of growth. If you never make mistakes, you never learn anything new. If you never fail, you never discover what you are truly capable of. If you eliminate all problems, you eliminate all opportunities to become better. The other species who took this test all tried to prove they were worthy, the curator said. They wanted to show their strength, their intelligence, their virtue, but worthiness is not something you prove. It is something you choose to embody every day. The room around them began to shift and change again. Lisa found herself back in the wheat field from before, but now it was different. The grain was not perfectly golden, but showed signs of weather damage and pest problems. Some areas were thriving while others struggled. It was not perfect, but it was real and alive. This is what the galaxy needs, the curator said, now appearing, as a figure made of gentle light walking beside her through the imperfect field. Not gardeners who eliminate all weeds and pests, but gardeners who understand that struggle is part of growth. What happens now? Lisa asked. Now you return to your people and tell them what you have learned. Humanity has been chosen not because you are perfect, but because you are willing to remain imperfect. You will inherit the architect's knowledge and technology, but you will use it not to solve every problem, but to help others learn to solve their own problems. Lisa felt a strange pulling sensation, as if she was being drawn back toward the chamber entrance. But before she left the curator's presence, she had one more question. Will the other species get another chance? The ones who failed before? The curator's form brightened with something that might have been joy. That is exactly the kind of question that proves you were the right choice. Yes, the chamber will be transformed. It will no longer be a test of worthiness, but a school of wisdom. Any species that wishes to learn can come here and discover what you have discovered. And what is that? That the greatest strength is admitting weakness. That the wisest choice is accepting ignorance. That the most powerful act is choosing to remain powerless. That the most perfect beings are those who embrace their imperfections. Lisa felt herself being pulled more strongly now. The wheat field was fading, and she could see the dark walls of the chamber materializing around her. Will I see you again? She asked. You will carry a part of me with you always, the curator replied. As will every human who chooses to remain. Human in the face of infinite possibility. That is our gift to your species. Not power over others, but understanding of yourselves. The chamber solidified around Lisa, and she found herself standing once again in the dark sphere. But now she was not afraid. She understood what she had been chosen to do. The entrance began to open, letting in the purple light of the alien sunrise. Lisa took a deep breath and stepped forward, ready to tell her people that they had not just passed an impossible test. They had inherited the responsibility to help the entire galaxy learn that being imperfect was the most perfect thing of all. Outside, she could hear the surprised voices of the assembled aliens. In 10,000 years, no one had ever emerged from the chamber alive and unchanged. But Lisa Chen had done more than survive. She had succeeded by choosing to fail, won by choosing to lose, and found strength by admitting weakness. She stepped into the light, ready to begin humanity's greatest adventure. Lisa Chen stepped out of the chamber into the purple dawn light of the alien world. The moment her feet touched the ground outside, a sound like thunder rolled across the landscape. Every alien in the gathered crowd stood frozen in shock. In 10,000 years, no one had ever walked out of that chamber alive. Commander Jake Morrison was the first to move. He ran toward Lisa, his face showing relief and amazement in equal measure. Lisa, are you hurt? What happened in there? Lisa looked at Jake and smiled. There was something different about her eyes now. A deep calm that had not been there before. I learned something important, Jake. I learned why we were chosen. Behind Jake, the other humans rushed forward. Amy Rodriguez grabbed Lisa's arm, checking for injuries. Ben Parker looked back at the chamber nervously, as if expecting something dangerous to follow Lisa out. But the black sphere remained silent and still. The alien representatives began to move closer, their various forms creating a strange circle around the small human woman. Counselor Vexthara pushed through the crowd, her 6 eyes wide with disbelief. This is impossible, she said, her mandibles clicking rapidly. No species has ever survived the trial. What trickery is this? No trickery, Lisa replied calmly. I took the test and passed it. Impossible, repeated a tall being covered in silver scales. I am Chancellor Mordux of the Hegemony. Our greatest warriors attempted this trial 5 times over the centuries, all died. How could a small, weak creature like you succeed where they failed? Lisa looked at the assembled aliens with compassion in her eyes. Because I did not try to prove I was strong. I accepted that I was weak. A floating ball of gas that represented the ethereals pulsed with confusion. That makes no sense. The test must measure worthiness. How can weakness be worthy? The test does not measure worthiness, Lisa explained. It offers power. Infinite power. The power to reshape reality, to become a god, to solve every problem in the universe. Every species that took the test tried to use that power to prove they deserved it. And you did not? Asked a crystalline being whose body rang like music. When it moved, I chose to refuse it, Lisa said simply. I chose to remain human. The crowd erupted in confused chatter. Dozens of different voices spoke at once in languages that the universal translators struggled to keep up with. The concept Lisa was describing seemed impossible to most of them. Vexthara raised her arm for silence. You are saying that the way to pass the test is to fail it deliberately? Not fail it, Lisa corrected. Understand it. The architects who built the chamber were looking for a species that would have the wisdom to refuse godhood. They wanted to find beings who would choose to remain limited, mortal, and imperfect. Commander Morrison stepped closer to Lisa. What exactly happened in there? Lisa looked up at the dark chamber behind them. As she watched, the strange symbols on its surface began to change. The cold blue light was shifting to a warmer, gentler glow. I met the curator, the last remnant of the architects, she said. They told me their story. The architects achieved perfection long ago. They eliminated death, suffering, and uncertainty. But in doing so, they also eliminated meaning, purpose, and joy. They realized too late that imperfection is what makes life worth living. Amy Rodriguez frowned. So they built this test to find someone who would make a different choice? Exactly. They wanted to find a species that would inherit their knowledge and technology, but would use it to help others grow rather than to eliminate all problems. They wanted gardeners, not gods. A new voice spoke from the crowd. It belonged to Commander Kekstar of the Korvaxians, a warrior species known throughout the galaxy for their fierce pride. His scarred face showed confusion and something that might have been shame. My people have attempted this trial 5 times, he said in his rough voice. Each time our greatest warriors entered with honor and died with courage. Are you saying they died because they were too proud? Lisa turned to face him, her expression gentle. They died because they tried to prove their worth through strength. But the test was not about proving anything. It was about choosing what kind of beings you want to be. I do not understand, Kekstar said. Your warriors entered the chamber ready to fight any enemy, to overcome any obstacle. When they were offered unlimited power, they probably tried to use it to protect your people or to defeat your enemies. But that was still thinking like warriors. The test required thinking like something else entirely. Like what? Lisa smiled. Like people who understand that some battles should not be won. Like people who know that sometimes the greatest strength is admitting you are not strong enough. Like people who choose to remain small in a universe that offers to make them giant. The crowd was quiet now, listening to her words with growing understanding. Many of the species represented here had lost members to the chamber. They had spent centuries wondering what they had done wrong. The chamber is changing, observed Dr. Chun, the mission's physicist. He pointed at the black sphere, which was now glowing with warm golden light. The harsh symbols on its surface were transforming into gentler patterns. The curator told me this would happen, Lisa said. The chamber will no longer be a test that kills those who fail. It will become a school that teaches species how to succeed. A school? Vexthara asked. A place where species can learn what? I learned that perfection is not the goal, growth is. Learning is. Choosing to be better tomorrow than you were today, while still remaining true to who you are. Chancellor Morduk stepped forward. And what gives humanity the right to teach the rest of us? Lisa looked at him with patience. Nothing gives us the right. We do not want to rule anyone or claim superiority over anyone. We just want to share what we learned. The choice to listen or to ignore us belongs to each species. And what exactly would this school teach? Asked the crystalline being. It would teach the Korvaxians that sometimes the strongest thing a warrior can do is choose not to fight. It would teach the mathematicians that some problems do not have solutions, only choices. It would teach the empaths that negative emotions are necessary parts of growth. It would teach every species that their greatest weakness might actually be their greatest strength. Amy Rodriguez looked amazed. You're talking about completely changing how the galaxy thinks about success and failure. Not changing, Lisa. Corrected. Remembering, every species starts out imperfect. Every species makes mistakes and learns from them. But somewhere along the way, most species become ashamed of their imperfections and try to eliminate them. The school would help them remember that those imperfections are not flaws to be fixed, but features to be celebrated. Commander Kekstar stepped closer to Lisa. Despite his imposing size and fierce appearance, his voice was gentle when he spoke. My people have spent centuries trying to prove our worth through battle. You're saying we have been wrong all this time? Not wrong, Lisa said, just incomplete. Your courage and honor are real strengths. But true strength also includes knowing when not to use your power. True honor includes admitting when you are wrong. True courage includes being vulnerable. With others? The Korvaxian commander was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he knelt down so that he was at eye level with the small human woman. Would this school accept a student like me? An old warrior who wants to learn a new way? Lisa reached out and gently touched his scarred hand. The school would welcome anyone who is brave enough to admit they do not have all the answers. And that kind of bravery is the hardest kind of all. Around them, other aliens began to murmur among themselves. The impossible had happened. A species had passed the test that had killed all others. And now they were offering to share what they had learned, not as conquerors or rulers, but as teachers and friends. The galaxy was about to change in ways no one could have imagined. 6 months had passed since Dr. Lisa Shan emerged from the chamber that had killed representatives from 847 different species. The galaxy was changing in ways that no one had expected. The Galactic Council met in emergency session aboard the giant space station called Concordia. The station orbited the same world where the testing chamber stood, but now that world looked very different. Ships from dozens of species filled the sky, all coming to visit what had once been called the Chamber of Death, but was now known as the School of Second Chances. Lisa Shan sat at the front of the great assembly hall, no longer just a mission. Psychologist, but now humanity's first ambassador to the galaxy. Beside her, Jake Morrison had been promoted to admiral and served as the military representative for his species. The other humans from the original mission had also taken new roles as humanity began to establish its place in the galactic community. The alien representatives filled the enormous hall, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors, shapes, and sizes. But the mood was different from 6 months ago. Instead of the polite boredom that had marked previous council meetings, there was excitement and hope in the air. The transformation continues to surprise us all, announced Chancellor Mordux, who now served as the council's temporary leader. When the humans first passed the trial, we expected them to claim leadership over the galaxy. Instead, they have given us something we never expected, a chance to try again. Lisa stood to address the assembly. In the months since her experience in the chamber, she had learned to speak to large groups of aliens, though she still felt nervous every time. The chamber has welcomed representatives from 37 different species so far, she reported. Not all of them have succeeded in their learning, but many have discovered new ways of thinking about their own strengths and weaknesses. She gestured to the viewing screen, which showed images from inside the transformed chamber. Instead of the dark, threatening sphere it had once been, the chamber now appeared as a place of gentle light and flowing water, with platforms floating peacefully in the air. Commander Kekstar of the Korvaxians was the first to enter the new chamber, Lisa continued. He spent 3 days inside, wrestling with the idea that true strength sometimes means choosing not to fight. When he emerged, he was crying. The screen showed the large, scarred warrior stepping out of the chamber with tears streaming down his face. I learned that the strongest thing a warrior can do is lay down his weapons and choose peace, he had said. I learned that protecting others sometimes means protecting them from myself. The mathematician sent prime calculator Zix9, Lisa continued. He spent a week trying to solve equations that had no solutions. When he came out, he was laughing. His species had not laughed in over 1,000 years. The screen showed the strange, symbol-covered being practically dancing with joy. I learned that the most beautiful equation is one that cannot be solved, he had said, because it leaves room for wonder and mystery. Amy Rodriguez stood up from her seat in the human section. We have also seen some failures, she said honestly. Not every species is ready to accept what the chamber teaches. Some still insist on trying to prove their worth through power. But that is acceptable, Lisa added quickly. The chamber no longer punishes failure with death. Those who are not ready simply find themselves back outside, unchanged but unharmed. They can try again whenever they feel ready. A new voice spoke from the assembly. It belonged to Counselor Vextara, who had been the first to warn humanity about the chamber's deadly history. I must admit, I was wrong about the humans, she sighed, her mandibles clicking in what her species used to show embarrassment. I thought they would die like all the others. I never imagined they would transform the chamber itself. We did not transform it, Lisa replied. We simply understood its true purpose. The architects built it to find a species that would choose wisdom over power, growth over perfection. When we made that choice, the chamber became what it was always meant to be. The crystalline being that represented the Resonance Collective chimed in with its musical voice. Our species has sent 3 representatives to the chamber. 2 learned valuable lessons. The third is still inside, learning to accept that harmony does not require everyone to think the same thoughts. Over the following hours, representative after representative stood to share their experiences. The empaths had learned to embrace negative emotions as necessary parts of growth. The hive-minded collective had begun to celebrate individual thoughts and disagreements. The perfectionists had discovered the beauty of random mistakes and happy accidents, but not everyone was pleased with the changes. Chancellor Mordux called for order as angry voices began to rise from one section of the assembly. This is madness, declared Supreme Commander Aztec of the Dominion Fleet. We are being asked to celebrate our weaknesses, to embrace our failures. This goes against everything that has made our species strong. Your species has been strong for thousands of years, Lisa replied calmly. But has it been happy? Has it been growing? Has it been learning new things about itself? Happiness is not the purpose of existence, Aztec shot back. Strength is, order is, control is. Then you are welcome to continue believing that, Lisa said. No one is forcing you to change. No one is forcing you to visit the chamber. The galaxy is large enough for all kinds of civilizations. But you are changing everything, Aztec continued. Species that were once proud and strong are now talking about embracing their weaknesses. You're making the galaxy soft and weak. Jake. Morrison stood up from his seat. With respect, Commander, we are not making anyone do anything. We are simply offering an alternative. Some species are choosing to explore that alternative. Others are not. Both choices are valid. Amy Rodriguez? A CTIVATD another display. Look at what has happened to the species that have embraced the chamber's lessons, she said. The Corvaxians have ended 3 different wars through negotiation instead of battle. The mathematicians have made breakthrough discoveries by accepting that some problems cannot be solved. The empaths have developed new therapies for mental illness by learning to work with negative emotions instead of trying to eliminate them. These species are not becoming weaker, Lisa added. They are becoming more complete. They are learning to use all of their abilities, not just the ones they were already proud of. The debate continued for hours, with some species eager to embrace the new way of thinking while others remained suspicious or hostile, but gradually a pattern emerged. The species that had been struggling with long-term problems were the most interested in learning from the chamber. The species that felt they had already achieved perfection were the most resistant to change. Finally, Lisa stood to make a closing statement. 6 months ago, humanity faced a test that had killed representatives from 847 species. We succeeded. Not because we were stronger or smarter than those who came before us, but because we were willing to admit that we were not strong or smart enough. She looked around the assembly, making eye contact with as many beings as possible. The chamber taught us that our greatest strength is our willingness to remain imperfect. Our ability to make mistakes and learn from them. Our refusal to give up hope even when hope seems foolish. Some of you will choose to learn from the chamber. Others will choose to continue on your current paths. Both choices are valid. But for those who do choose to learn, you will discover what we discovered, that being imperfect is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to be celebrated. Because in a universe that constantly tries to achieve perfection, someone has to be brave enough to remain beautifully, magnificently imperfect. Someone has to be willing to fall down and get back up again. Someone has to be willing to make the wrong choice and keep choosing anyway. Lisa sat down to thunderous applause from about half the assembly. The other half remained silent, still unsure about these strange new ideas, but that was acceptable. Change takes time, and the galaxy had plenty of time outside the Great Hall. The transformed chamber continued to glow with warm, welcoming light. Ships arrived daily, bringing representatives from species across the galaxy who wanted to learn what humanity had learned. Not all would succeed, but all would have the chance to try. The impossible test had finally been passed, not by becoming perfect, but by choosing to remain imperfect. And in that choice, humanity had given the galaxy something it had never had before: permission to be beautifully, magnificently flawed. The future stretched out before them, uncertain and challenging and full of mistakes waiting to be made. But for the first time in galactic history, that was exactly how it should be.